Well, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is Harry Brelsford coming to you live from the south side of Bainbridge Island. And appreciate everybody taking time out of their day. It's lunchtime on the West Coast, mid-afternoon on the East Coast, early evening over in Europe, and very, very early morning over in Australia and parts of Asia. So, and we got everybody from all those regions on today. So thank you for joining us. It is the Q2 MSP Analyst Report. This is one of our popular formats. As always, I'm with Karl Palachuk. We'll hear from Karl in a moment. A little bit of housekeeping up front. So next week we have a webinar on the Cloud Advisor program to CSP. So a deep dive on that. That's timely because that motion changed July 1st. In August we have two webinars on SharePoint security. I will be at CompTIA ChannelCon August 31st through August 3rd, and I've actually built in an extra day afterwards. If there's any reason for meetings or what have you, let me know if you're going to that thing. And then the following week, I'm at SharePoint Fest, and that's actually in Seattle. That's a 3-day in Seattle. So if you're coming up for SharePoint Fest, let me know about that. And before you know it, then it's time to go fishing. So that's kind of the schedule near term. Let's jump right into it. For those of you that are not familiar with SMB Nation, we are 18 years in business. And so what I need to do with Jenny is we need to add a couple more cupcakes. If you look at that 5, we could just add, I think, 2 more cupcakes would turn that into an 8. So maybe I can Photoshop that. We participate broadly in the industry. And we've been featured in several other media outlets and covered over the years. With that said, let's jump into the good stuff. So again, my name is Harry Brelsford with SMB Nation, and we have Karl Palachuk. So Karl, sir, where are you? And that's going to make sense on one of the final slides, why I asked that. Where are you? Later on we'll ask where you're going and how you're going to get there, but where are you, sir?
Today, I'm at home. I check in for my flight as soon as I get off this call.
Okay, great. Well, we'll keep people in suspense. Karl, for those in the audience that don't know you, who is Karl Palachuk?
Well, I am a former managed service provider. I have built and sold 2 managed service companies in Sacramento, California, and I am the author of 15 books, most of which are on managed services and how to be better at the business side of your IT business.
There you go. Okie dokie. And then we have Armando. Sir, are you on? I know we're going to talk to you at midpoint. Are you on, sir?
I sure am.
Great. Why don't you briefly introduce yourself, and then we're going to come back to you at the bottom of the hour.
Absolutely. My name is Armando Najera, and I'm the Director of Business Development for Ninja. So I help facilitate some of our third-party contracts and things that we do at Ninja, as well as just kind of how our product moves forward and helping with product demonstrations and things like that of our remote monitoring and management platform.
Okay, great, and thanks for your support. Folks, Ninja's been a great community supporter in terms of allowing us to do what we do best and having analytical and academic conversations with you, and they do what they do best, and we're going to hear from them at a little bit later time. Before I jump into the agenda, I do just want to clarify one thing, that the word is from late Q2 that the Amelia Earhart photo was indeed a hoax. Okay, so just to put you at ease, let's jump right into it. We have the agenda. Don't worry so much about this. We're going to go over these on the slides, but each quarter we like to call it like we see it. You'll notice a couple things are missing from this quarter. So last year and a couple of the quarters, I think the first quarter in 17, we talked about merger and acquisition activity. We're not doing that right now. So we have new topics that are more timely, I would offer, or at least came up on our radar screen, all the way from the report from Inspire last week in Washington, D.C. that I'll speak towards, all the way ending with Karl's success secrets and lessons learned from the road. So let's jump into it. Microsoft Inspire. Karl, speak up at any time. And, right. But what I'll do is offer what I saw. So first of all, that conference is continuing to grow. I think they quoted 18,000 real attendees, and that's up from about 15,000. These tend to be higher end Microsoft partners. I got into a conversation with how many were international attendees. One person thought 35%. I thought about half of the people were from overseas. They really benefit from this conference. And Karl, before I get into the points, I guess my feeling for our audience being down in the SMB space is you got to do it once. You got to go to WPC once. Quite frankly, it may not be the best fit to go every year. Any thoughts on that? It tends to be a big boy conference. You know what I'm trying to say. The goal.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you and I were there when they announced the small business specialist, and they spent a few years with a special lounge just for us and all that. But I think it's worth going, even though that era is clearly over. So, but to see what bigger partners are talking about, and to kind of feel the vibe of, I mean, you don't get a chance to go to too many conferences that have 15, 16, 17,000 people.
Yeah. No, it's a must-do once. Speaking of vibes, I'll jump right into it, and we'll keep us going. We have a lot of slides, or a lot of content. It was a weird vibe because just a few days before Microsoft had reached its new fiscal year FY18, announced a series of layoffs, and it was a little wonky. There's no question about it. If you saw somebody there, you kind of walked up to them and said, "Oh man, you're still alive. God, that's great." And I watched it. I listened and I watched the keynotes with good, and I listened intently, and I did not hear the word SMB, the acronym, over 3 days. What I heard was for one commercial partner, they spelled out small business and enterprise, but they didn't use Karl, they didn't use that acronym, actually. At one point they said SBS on day 3 in passing, but I was really listening for that. And then they over-mentioned Inspire, and that would be one of my criticisms of the conference was it was a play on words. Like they'd bring up the not-for-profit, they'd bring up the this, they'd bring up the that. Aren't we inspired? Karl, it is a bit much, my friend, towards the
Well, I saw, Eric Ligman posted the videos that were supposedly like day 1 summary, day 2 summary, and there was like 0 content in those videos. I mean, you had to go looking for actual articles that summarized what anybody might have actually said.
Yeah. It wasn't a conference of great depth in that sense. Moving on, Cindy Bates and her team are gone, or some of her team are gone. So Steve Fielding, a pretty good friend of mine, and his team are gone. Cindy Bates is gone. I have an article about all this if you want to go to smbnation.com. It's under analysis right now. I think I wrote about 800 words. So I'm not going to read you the article, but you can kind of get my take on Microsoft Inspire. Then, Karl, there was an interesting thing with Tech Data and Microsoft, and the link you see there, folks, bit.ly/SBS returns. It's a piece by Scott Becker, well-respected writer at Redmond Channel Partner Magazine. I saw him in the press lounge, and he was off to talk to the Tech Data Group, and they are yet again coming to market with sort of the next SBS. And, Karl, you and I lent a hand to Zinstra out of Bath, England. Mm-hmm. So we've kind of been there. I'm going to make mention of a hybrid solution on the open source side from ClearOS and another slide or so. But I don't know, Karl. It's a good piece by Scott. I mean, what's your take? The next SBS, the new SBS. I don't know if we're going to hook that paradigm. I had I'll put it this way. I had someone ask me directly, is that sort of the resurgence of the SBS user group and the community? And I said, I don't know, my friend. Karl?
I think what we need is a small cloud community, because I don't think, even if you could have an SBS server, I don't know that there's a gap for it to fill anymore. You know, that I think those days are truly gone.
Yeah, we celebrate them. And the Cloud Advisor to Cloud Services Provider, that's next week, folks, on the 27th. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that today. We have a whole hour of next week with that. Okay, gap fillers, MDF, MSP disruption, and shadow economy. So gap fillers, one of our community members, Michael Proper, is the CEO at Clear Center. And in June, their product is ClearOS. And in June, they announced a partnership with HP, offering preloaded ClearOS with the HP ProLiant servers to make SMB IT simple, affordable, and so on. And I did a little digging into that. That basically they feel they're disrupting the SMB marketplace by combining the server, network, and gateway all in one system, all in one platform. So, Karl, that's sounding a little bit like SBS, but it's from the open source side. Karl, have you worked with open source?
I have worked a bit with open source. It's funny, the ProLiants also ship with, I think it's Ubuntu. Yep. I mean, it's not free if you activate it. I'm sure ClearOS isn't either. But those things are pretty powerful on the HP systems, and they load very quickly and very easily off of their Smart Start. So Yeah, so that's one to watch, folks, the HP ClearOS hybrid server. Let's move on. Let's talk about the MSP marketplace ripe for disruption. And I saw something fly by the other day, Karl, that Amazon is thinking in terms of service providers, and that would be akin to the way Sears would have someone come out and install your appliance or your garage door. You periodically see those articles come through, but boy, if there's someone that looks at a market and looks for disruption, it'd be an Amazon. And Karl, I don't know. I mean, we've had these conversations over the years with Best Buy. Is it a friend or foe? That kind of thing. Your take, sir? Yeah, I mean, the thing is, in my opinion, these really big companies, no matter how good they are and how friendly they are, they can't standardize the last mile. That's just a place where they all fall apart. And a perfect example is somebody was putting up a whine today on Facebook about the guy who installed the copy machine nuked the rest of the network by putting in an incorrect DNS entry. And it's exactly the case. Like, these people who don't know what they're doing get into the network, and it's just more job security for us.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, Amazon's made a couple of runs at a couple of things that were concerning. Do you remember, Karl? Probably don't remember, and that speaks towards the fact it didn't hit, but Amazon had a workstation as a service solution that essentially was RDP, and never really got legs. Right up there with the Amazon phone. Shadow economy. So I want to talk about this. That I fancy myself a student of economics and CNBC and so on. And while the markets are doing great, the feet on the street aspect is I recently changed our mailing address and opened a box at the UPS store, and I love it. Karl, I should have done that a long time ago, man. They have the photocopier. They have everything there, right, when I got to do what I got to do. So I'm really happy with that, and I was talking with the people behind the counter about, how are things going? What are you hearing out there on Main Street with small businesses that tend to have that kind of postal box? And they said, it's really funny, but this last few months, people will call in and check for their mail. They'll call and say, hey, is there any mail in box 202? And the clerk will go over and recite what the mail is. And they said, you'd be surprised. Like, it's little sole proprietor lawyers, boutique lawyers calling in, asking, is there a check in there?
Right.
Is there a check in there from Kelly Landscaping? And they said that that has really ticked up in the last fiscal quarter, would be the proverbial vendor stretch. And, you know, Karl, you've lived out in that world, not so much anymore, but you and I have talked about this, that, you know, what was it, coming out of the recession, due on receipt all of a sudden became 60 days? I mean, seriously, dude?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, I've had a UPS, a mailbox, even when I had an office for many years, for a decade. It's always a nice place to know that no matter who's in the office or outside the office, there's a place where you can get your packages delivered and somebody's going to sign for them and all that. And so I've been kind of tuned into that. But right now, I mean, I check my mailbox once a week, you know, and it's rare that a check comes that I'm not expecting. You know what I mean? But the payment has, I think it's stretched out, and it sort of stretched out permanently after the recession. I think a lot of companies are just, their norm is now to pay as late as possible.
Yeah. And, you know, I'll tell you this, back in the old days, a late payment, so I'm thinking of my hardcore white-collar consulting days, the 1990s and 2000s, was a late payment was a sign of dissatisfaction. So that's how the client voted, with their feet, if you will, that they weren't happy with the service. And I was in a big public accounting firm, so we saw it all. Karl, to your point, I think the post-recession behavior is the payment stretch. And I guess we just got to get used to it.
Or get paid in advance. That's always my advice.
Yeah. You do that. We're going to talk about your workshop where you offer some of that advice. Armando, we're already up to your slide, sir. If you're still there and you want to tell who is Ninja?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, Ninja is a remote monitoring management platform. We were born in the cloud, which is great because the platform was built from the ground up. And we have a 99.9% guaranteed uptime with Ninja, so we have a lot of different redundancies that are set up in place. You know, our product's really designed to make the MSP's life easier in the aspect of having the abilities to monitor workstations and servers, as well as our full automated remediation services that our platform utilizes when conditions go off. And we're going to handle a lot of the big security problems out there, you know, with the patch management. The system has full automated patch management built inside of it, as well as we have a couple of different security vendors that we work with for antivirus. One of them, most importantly, that integrates with Ninja is Webroot, as well as we offer Malwarebytes and Bitdefender as a solution for Ninja. And then, of course, on the backup and recovery side, you know, we really heavily rely on our integration. So we have a very nice integration with StorageCraft, Shadow Protect, and Image Manager products, as well as Cloudberry as a backup to Ninja platform. And then, of course, the remote control system, which is TeamViewer, who we integrate with. You got to have a way to get into the machines. So we have a fantastic one-of-a-kind integration with TeamViewer as our remote control platform into our Ninja product.
Where might people run into Ninja over the next few months? So for example, would you be at the CMP Exchange show in August, or the CompTIA ChannelCon, or where might people bump into you?
Definitely at CompTIA, we will be showcasing there. So we try to pick a lot of different events to showcase that. So you should see us at the next couple of CompTIAs. You know, SMB Nation. We showcase at some different MSP events around.
Sure. Okay. Well, thanks for being a community supporter, and again, many thanks for I'm going to say respecting the community. You know, it's your support that makes this happen, like public radio, and I think people appreciate that, and then also that you're respectful of their time and message. So, sir, the halo effect to you.
Well, we appreciate that. We appreciate everybody's time, and any time somebody wants to take a look at Ninja, obviously you can go to www.ninjamsp.com and take a look at us. We have some fantastic promotions for the month of July here. If you sign up, we're giving out free NMS devices. So a lot of great stuff with Ninja. Come check us out, inquire, and take a demo with us, and we'll be happy to show off our product. And we appreciate your time today. Thank you for having us on today. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. So, folks, if you joined late, my name is Harry Brelsford. I'm with Karl Palachuk again for the second quarter MSP Analyst Report. I realize we're just started Q3, but we like to actually get through the quarter and then reflect back on the quarter and then maybe make a couple of forward-looking statements. Jenny, with this next slide, if you could start to tee up the poll that we're going to talk about. We'll get to that in a moment. But I want to talk about a topic we surfaced, boy howdy, it would have been Q4 on this call, and I want to bring it back and just see if there's any change in sentiment. Karl, pitch in, but is our community ready for the conversation of AWS versus Azure? You're doing the workshops, and the little I've had this conversation within the SMB space was that folks are, Azure's just not right-sized for the S of SMB. What's your take, sir?
Well, it depends on your goals, but for most of what people need, I think Azure's great if what you need is hosted servers, but a lot of the stuff where if what you want is Exchange mailboxes and a place to store your stuff, then Azure may not be the right fit. And I've had some debates with some of the Microsoft MVPs about this. But at the end of the day, both Amazon and Azure are kind of a build your own environment for cloud services. And I think most people would do better to find something that they can resell through one of the major distributors. So having said that, there are a few things that Azure is spectacular at. If what you need is a SQL instance in the cloud with absolute uptime and massive bandwidth, by all means, that's the place to get it. So, part of it depends on what you're doing. And a lot of people in our space don't just work on little offices with 10 people and half a server. A lot of them are hosting servers in the cloud or building servers on site and have 6, 7, 8 servers at a client's office. So both Azure and Amazon would be appropriate to move those servers up into the cloud.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's an emerging conversation. Folks, if you want to get your head into some AWS and Azure independent conversations, there's 2 resources. If you want to Google or find on LinkedIn or Facebook, Kim Schmidt. So that's Kim Schmidt. Is Karl, think of her as sort of the Beatrice of Azure and AWS. Okay, I mean she's a real go-getter. And then the other would be Sysgain. So some friends of mine over at Sysgain, they do developer tools and accelerators, in particular for Azure right now. But that just gives you some insights into that world that it definitely has a developer component to it. What we did when I brought this topic up last time, Q4, we were surveying the audience to see, would you come to Seattle for a 2-day in this fall? So that's coming up quicker than we think. But would you come to Seattle for a 2-day for a shootout between AWS and Azure? The feedback came back negative from this audience at that time. And Karl, I think part of it is we're probably talking to the wrong audience, with all due respect. We probably needed to reach out and talk to the IT pro community, quite frankly, more at the enterprise level. So, 9 months ago, the audience was not interested in paying for a 2-day in Seattle from the MSP community. Fair enough. We didn't do it. Jenny, if you're over there in the control room, if you could throw up the vacation poll, we want to have a little bit of fun here, folks. And while she's doing that, I just want to talk to you about vacation carryover and PTO as you run a business. Karl, I'm going to form it as a question to you as in the way you advise people to run their businesses and standard operating procedures. What are you seeing out there? I'm seeing 15 days of PTO, so that's typically 5 sick, 10 vacation, use them as you please, with no carryover. So if you quit or something, you don't get cashed out. What are you seeing in MSP practices?
Well, most people, again, are just scratching and clawing to try to, get a week out where they don't have to be tethered to their office. So I'm a huge fan of at least growing your company with enough processes and procedures so that you can take a vacation. And unfortunately, at the small end of the market, there's a lot of people who just, they're too busy mopping the floor to fix the roof, so they haven't put their processes in place, and so another year slips by without vacation.
And that's what we call Karl time. Hey, Jenny, go ahead and read the results. I'm in presenter mode, so I see a snapshot of it, but you're going to have a better view of it.
Sure. So where are you going on vacation this year? 30% of people said they're doing a staycation. 13% said they'll be able to do international travel. 18% said 100 miles away from home. 23% said they're traveling within the country. And 18% said vacation, what's that?
It's almost 20% of the population. I feel your pain. I feel your pain. And Karl, you weren't allowed to answer. We're going to talk, if you answered on that international piece.
Yeah, very different answer for me.
Okay. Finally on this slide, folks, thank you, Jenny. And folks, be sure to use the question feature to ask questions you have for Karl and I. You can always think of this as your free hour of consulting. Finally on this slide is the George Foreman. The great George Foreman was a keynote speaker at the SAGE Summit in early May in Atlanta, Georgia. Very motivational, and I'll talk about the trend in conferences having the headliner is now becoming common in our space. But this is part of a series, in all seriousness, about, hey, George, what should I do? If you want to go to smbnation.com and search on George Foreman, you'll see my blog on the interview. And what I'm doing this summer is I'm going around as I travel and asking thought leaders on what should you do, whether you're a young person, so chronologically young, or a mature person and you want to become an MSP. So Karl, if you could just start all over, what should you do? And in the case of George Foreman, relating to my son, the answer was very simple. He's off to college, and it was just get a job, right? Just literally start working, learn how to work. And fair enough, from George Foreman. I'll be posting up a video with Austin McCord from Datto later this month. So I stopped by the Datto headquarters about 10 days ago in Connecticut, and we did a video shoot where I asked Austin the same question. And, Karl, Austin's qualified to answer that. He's still pretty young. He's only like 32.
Right.
He's qualified to answer that, and he grew Datto in 10 years. That's literally about their 10th anniversary. And then finally, I had a conversation last week with Fortinet, the security vendor down in Sunnyvale. Same question. I'll be popping that video up as well later in the month. So, Karl, I'm going to turn it back to you. Let's take a young person. What would a newbie? What would a newbie do today to become an MSP? Top 3 things.
Top 3 things. First thing is, I would say commit to recurring revenue. There's this idea that you're going to make a living with people who pay you $300 a year is just absurd. And one of the things I always tell people is you don't have to pick up every nickel you find. So sign contracts for recurring revenue, which means maintenance. It's really engaging in a relationship with the client instead of just doing all of this, an hour here and an hour there. For some reason, our brains think that that's going to make a living, and there's just no way to make $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year with clients who will only pay you an hour at a time. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, and we already touched on this a bit, Get paid in advance for everything you can. Most of the reason that we don't get paid in advance is we don't ask about it. We don't think about it. Again, there's sort of a natural thing when you get started to just start offering people credit even if they haven't asked for it. And, you know, if I said, here, hold this $100 bill, you would say, oh, absolutely, Karl, I'd be happy to do that, right? So if you offer somebody credit, of course they're going to take it. That doesn't mean that they expected it or they really think that it's necessary for the relationship. And the third thing is commit to training, never-ending training, because this industry is going to be flipped upside down again in the next 5 years, as it was in the last 5 years and the 5 years before that and the 5 years before that. So, you know, we're entering a period where change is increasing in speed and complexity every year, and you just have to just be completely dedicated to learning new stuff. And if you don't, you will be washed out very, very quickly.
Yeah, let's key in on that. So you have dabbled in fact, it was a year ago. What was called WPC, now Inspire. A year ago, they announced a degree for data science, and I know you've dabbled in it, and you know you're still a student. You've had some travel kind of bump in and that kind of thing, but talk to us about your decision to, do you want to call it retraining yourself or just kind of expanding your horizon by jumping into the Microsoft data science degree?
Yeah, well, part of it is my graduate degree, I took a lot of statistics and so forth, so I figured I have a bit of a leg up on some people. But you know, I took their first class on data analytics, learned about some of the R programming and how that you can get a free account at Azure just for that, and it was a great introduction to the amazing stuff that's going on out there. And I will, I'm not going to dedicate to it full time, but I'm going to consistently educate myself more and more and more. One of the free books that Microsoft is giving away now, that Eric Ligman was
Eric Ligman,
is on business intelligence. It is about this way of thinking about data, and as you know, that is absolutely the future. And people who ignore it, they don't get to be part of the future. So you don't have to become an expert, but you should actually have some understanding of what big data are and what it does for you, and a little bit about how you manipulate that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's as my brother, who's bilingual, once told me. I said, Taylor, do I need to learn a language, which I still want to do. I'd love to learn Spanish. And he said, just start by having control of your own language. Mastery of your own language. The point, Karl, is you don't have to boil the ocean, right? Just take take one bite of that elephant at a time and get your head into it. Folks, a shout out to Market Motive. People will ask me, what's a curriculum that's legit in digital marketing and some other areas? And Jenny and I have looked at it and talked about it. Again, maybe once winter comes, I can wrap my arms around it. But Market Motive is a series of classes that are the real deal over in digital marketing and analytics, which is closely related to big data. We move on. So it's time. There we go. It's time for some summer reading. So I'll go first. And then, Karl, we have a good conversation at the bottom of this that you're pretty passionate about the robot thing. So summer reading, what I'm reading right now is the ADD Entrepreneur. And for me, what it is it's a book that I don't have to apologize, Karl, for my personal lifestyle, my behavior, how I feel. This book validates that it's okay. In fact, it's a secret weapon. It's a secret weapon to have that kind of energy. I mean, Karl, man, sometimes I can't even get to sleep some nights. You know what I mean? It's just like, what's wrong with me? This is a really cool book by Matt Curry. And then Karl and I were joking during rehearsal that I've actually had to kind of stay focused on completing the book, which is a function of ADD, and then I found out that I can have Alexa read it to me, so that's even cooler. So I could have it read to me, Karl. The other one It's a book I just got, so you'll laugh at this, Karl. At Inspire, on the final day in Washington, D.C., there had apparently been a booth with the book giveaway, the proverbial book giveaway, and they had not given away all their books. And so then they were faced with the prospect of shipping heavy books back to from which they came.
I know nothing about that.
Yeah. And so I'm holding a hardcover book called Technology as a Service Playbook, and what they did in that convention center in Washington, D.C. is they put a guy at the bottom of the escalator who handed you the book, and because of the funnel effect, and Karl, this was an escalator that was one person wide. Okay, so you couldn't go around the guy, you couldn't go around the person grabbing the book, and because of the funnel effect, where people were going to start toppling like dominoes, trying to, the surge, I grabbed one. I mean, everybody grabbed one, and I'm like, that's guerrilla marketing. That's really cool.
Exactly.
I love it. You have to grab it, or you're, going to get squished. And so, Technology as a Service Playbook, it actually addresses some startup ideas I have. Karl, the next two are yours. Talk to us about what someone might read on the beach.
All righty. Well, I did want to tell you a little story, which is I was at a conference a few months ago, and Dan Spring was doing exactly that, standing in line. Nobody could get into the lunch line without giving them her card, giving her their card. So,
there you go.
Well, that's
Jan Spring, the legendary.
He's so awesome at that. I am just finishing a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, and this is an interesting book. It's not specifically about IT, but it is about business and about how our brains work and how information gets filtered automatically just by the processes inside of our head. So anyway, I found it just truly interesting and kind of an exciting way to look at how our perceptions affect everything. And to be honest, it's not intended to be political, but it gives you some great insight to why our political debate is going the way it is in terms of people being so angry and so frustrated at everything. And then I love the book Great by Choice, and I particularly love the audio version. And even if you've read it, I recommend that you go to Audible, and this is not a paid advertisement, but go to Audible and buy Great by Choice and listen to the audio version. It is such a great story, and as he weaves in, the discussions of things like the search for the South Pole, it is just an extremely well done book full of many, many great lessons. So if you haven't read it, get it. If you haven't heard the audio, get that.
Hey, Karl, before you get to robots, I want to make mention sort of on your wrapping around, the world in which we live and the political dynamic and all that. Not to avoid that issue, but to avoid that whole conversation. And the reason is Karl and I checked off on that in Q1. Right, because boy howdy, you talk about top of mind. So, folks, that's archived. We are avoiding that conversation today because, Karl, to some extent, we already had it. Let's talk robots, automation.
So I've had many, many discussions with people about the speed of change and the evolution of technology, and think about the entire automobile industry. I give this example in my cloud presentation. When you think about driving a car that right now we drive them, but soon they will drive us. And then you think about Elon Musk and his crowd. They want the entire trucking industry to be taken over by self-driving trucks. When that happens, it isn't just the truckers who lose their jobs. It is every truck stop in America becomes redundant, because you no longer have to have somebody who needs to stop and get a shower, get a meal, buy some tchotchkes, refuel their vehicle, right? You'll still need to maintain them, but an entire industry and an infrastructure all across the world will simply disappear, and that could be 5, maybe 10 years down the road, but it will happen. And the same is true with one industry after another. If something is repetitive and it can be replaced, it will be. And we got to figure out what we're going to do. luckily, if you put computer consultant in there and then you drill down to, a systems engineer, there is no chance that your job's going to disappear. So if you're listening to this, chances are very good your job will not disappear. But lots of your clients' jobs will. And you got to figure out what you're going to do. And, this isn't a someday thing. This isn't 10 years or 5 years down the road. This is happening now. People's industries are disappearing. So this is just an interesting site to go through and put in a job title and see if they think that job's going to disappear. They give some statistics about what their growth rate is, positive or negative, in the last few years, and what it's projected to be going forward. So put in your spouse's job, put in your clients one at a time, and find out how much they're going to be replaced by automation.
Yeah, or if you're looking for a spouse, maybe put in the type of job.
Exactly.
and start going to those conferences. Let me tell you, buddy boy. Hey, 2 comments. One is the ethics surrounding some of this transformation. And Karl, you've heard my talking point on this before, but maybe the audience hasn't, is that when I was in the so Karl, when I was in a big data startup for 2 years, I exited December 30th, and we were in an area called predictive analytics. And big data is a big field. So think of it as medicine, and think of that I was a cardiologist. Okay, I was just in one specific area. So I want to be clear about that. That's all I know. But my 87-year-old mom, was kind of asking, what do I have a job? Is typically how the conversation would start. And then what do I do? And I finally had to kind of explain it to her. And there's a real ethics issue that I said, Mom, think of it this way, that I'm part of the problem, okay? I'm part of the problem, not the solution. And Karl, by that I mean that there's the kind of data that we had access to. Now, we were in no way, up there with Eric Snowden, but we certainly mastered the interrogation of publicly facing data. And it's freaking scary, Karl.
Yeah.
But
there's also opportunities, right? I mean, look at some of your favorite apps on your phone are things where, somebody said, give me some code that maps stuff, and give me some data about restaurants, and give me data about travel times, and boom, you have an app that gets you to your favorite restaurant in a reasonable amount of time. It's just, it never ends, and the opportunities are just phenomenal going forward. But you can't be stuck putting DVDs into servers and building what you think is a replacement for SBS.
Yeah, and you've actually walked me into my second point, that one of my a piece of paper in my notebook of unused ideas is robotrepair.com, and so. You can think about that. Well, I don't like robots. Robots take jobs. Okay, I don't like robots. I have an ethical issue with robots on the left hand. Or on the right hand, how can I capitalize on robots? Well, I guess I could be a repair shop for them.
Right.
So, okay, moving on, folks. The next great thing, security. I kept this from last quarter. Okay, and the reason I kept this is I have a different spin on it. What I told you about last quarter was some polling we did, and Karl and I talked about this as we were digging deeper and deeper and deeper into analytics and marketing as a service and so on. And in that context, analytics landed with a thud in our audience. If you look at the polling results, not quite where we want to steer the conversation. Now, what we were happy with overall was security, okay, that security continues to be an amazing opportunity and an evergreen, and Karl, a day doesn't go by in, a certain realm where security is not an issue, truly. And what I want to do is give a shout out to, we have a 2-part series in August, so you'll be notified of this, but we have a 2-part series on SharePoint security. And what's interesting is I've gotten my head into this area, and in fact, in DC, I met with a guy that holds the patent for some encryption algorithms with SharePoint, is there's some real granular conversations here. So there's the idea that SharePoint can encrypt, I'm going to call it the corpus, but then there's the issue about encrypting the individual documents inside a SharePoint, which apparently SharePoint does not do, and you need to use this guy's magic tool to do it. And then, Karl, there's the proverbial castle drawing of security with the moat and knights, and
Right.
so security. So security is good at keeping people out of the castle. So we can say that security is good with in transit issues. The document is encrypted in transit in email. But then what about at rest? What happens when it's inside the castle and it's at rest? And a lot of encryption algorithms don't encrypt at rest. They encrypt in transit. Karl, let me turn this upside down into a question. What security conversations have you had this last quarter, this last 6 months with your roadshow, your one-day MSP roadshow?
Well, it's interesting because this whole question of security and encryption, people were asking, and I actually did some research on their behalf about, well, if I'm going to store my stuff in the cloud, is that secure from encryption? If I get the whatever the latest ransomware is, Petya or whatever, is it going to make me want to cry because it gets encrypted? And I talked to Rackspace, I talked to Azure, I talked to Intermedia, Jungle Disk, and they all basically said, look, if you have the power to read and write from that document, the fact that it travels encrypted doesn't matter. If you can see it in clear, it can be encrypted from you. So if you have the power to write to it, you have the power to encrypt it. So that means, obviously, you need to limit your own powers when you're doing this stuff, but also you got to have recovery. You just, the most secure system has to be backed up with an image or something so you can get it back. And that is continuing to be the conversation of the century for the 21st century, is how do we image this stuff and how do we get it back in a reasonable amount of time?
Yeah, Karl, and going back to the George Foreman conversation a slide or two ago, and again, all politics is local. All situations are local. So if you take my 18-year-old son who's going to Cal Poly in just several weeks, and he's going to study information technology in the School of Business. And Karl, you know where I'm going with this is the famous line from the 1968 movie The Graduate. Karl, why don't you deliver the line? What did I tell my son to study?
What's it, plastics?
He'll be employed forever if he'll listen to Dad. There's a little bit of an issue there. Okay, so let's have a little bit of fun. Folks, be sure to use the question feature for questions you have for Karl and I, and it can be related or unrelated. Our hour is your hour. So, Karl, where in the world are you going, and what is your story, and how can people travel more comfortably like you do, my friend?
Well, my next two road shows are Chicago and Detroit next week. Okay. And then I'm off in August I'm going to London, Manchester, Edinburgh, and Dublin. So and then there's only just literally a handful of U.S. cities left after that. Then I go to Australia in October. So the days are counting down. So if you want to hit the SMB Roadshow this year, you need to go to smbroadshow.com and check it out. So I did want to talk a bit about the vacations. We talked about, how much vacation do you get and what are you going to do and all that. The way that I travel is I take a few days of vacation here and a few days there, and like this trip to Chicago and Detroit. I'll give a great example. So Friday I go to Chicago, and then I'm going to meet my life coach in person for the first time, so that's kind of cool. We're going to have lunch and see a little bit of the city, and then I'm going to meet up with Josh Peterson, who he teaches some classes for me and does some coaching, and I'm going to just meet up with some friends and enjoy myself in Chicago. And then on Tuesday I have the road show, and I travel to Detroit, and on Thursday I have the road show, and then I'm going to go to the Henry Ford Museum with a bunch of friends, and I'm going to hang out for the weekend with some people from my graduate school. So, you know, I'm turning 2 days of technical work and the travel related to that into basically an 8-day, you know, relaxed, enjoyable time. And because I can work from the road, obviously that's a big piece of it, but everybody in this profession can work from the road. I mean, if you have clients who are a 6-hour drive away, you more often remote into their systems than you drive to their office. So, you know, people need to, I think, add relaxed time to their travel. And I am not going to be, and I won't name any names, but we all know people in this industry that they fly all the way to Australia, give a presentation, and fly home within 12 hours and go to the next conference. And I am not going to be that guy. You know?
Yeah.
Just...
Well, Karl, in all fairness, back when Beatrice and I carried the projector and the suitcase for Ascentus, a beloved Microsoft vendor in training and hands-on labs that got acquired, they're gone. But back in the day, that was their policy. And take it or leave it. You know, I don't begrudge them for that. But I was there, dude. I mean, I flew all the way to India. You know, so 13-hour time shift. Did my thing and flew all the way home, and that was how it worked in that era. And man, dude, that afternoon in India, I mean, I could not stay awake, man.
Well, you were in the wrong side of the world.
Yeah.
Talk about a time zone. You were in the way zone. So.
Well, and folks, what I just did recently with the trip to Inspire was. A lot like Karl, I went out a couple days early and stayed with Lars Anderson, a well-known MSP in New Canaan, Connecticut. People would recognize Lars, and Karl stayed at his place. He's got a boat. We went on Long Island Sound, man. It was great. I think you noticed, by the way, that we had inadvertently and mistakenly dressed alike on that boat that day.
It must have been in the air. So
yeah, we got a little grief on Facebook. Karl, what's Duffel and Rome Hotels?
So a Duffel and the Rome Hotel that I'm going to in London are very interesting examples of a way that you can add a little relaxation into your trip. So Duffel is the service that you subscribe to, and they send you a piece of luggage, you know, with the 4 spinning wheels and the pull-up handle and the whole deal, and you fill it full of clothes and you send it back to them. They wash everything, launder it, press it, fold it, get it ready for you to go, and then there's an app on your phone, and you say, I'm going to be in Chicago, and I need this at this hotel on this day. And you literally go click, 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 and you say, I want these 6 shirts and that pair of pants and this belt, and they pack your bag for you, and when you get to your hotel, it's there. So you have the clothes that you need for your trip, pick up the bag, take it to Detroit, do what you need to do, and when you leave Detroit, you just take one of the FedEx labels that's inside that bag, put it on there, ask for a pickup. They then index any clothes you've added that weren't already part of your duffel closet. They launder everything, they press it, they fold it, they get it ready to go to the next city. So that's a service that allows me to have unlimited weight because it's not on an airline, and to just, I only have to pack for like a couple of days, you know, day at the beginning and 2 days at the end, and I'm golden. So that's a service that's worth looking into. And anyway, so that's kind of fun, and if people travel a fair amount, that's worth doing. It's not good for an overnight, but it is good for, you know, a week-long trip. The Rome Hotel, and it's just rome.co, there are, I think they have 4 now, and almost they're about to open their 5th hotel. These are co-working, co-living hotels. So you can't rent it for a night. It's only by the week, by the month, or by the year. And to apply to stay at one of these hotels, you have to demonstrate that you run your business from the road, which I don't have any problem with the SMB Roadshow. But basically, every single person at this hotel is going to be somebody that I'm going to get some great ideas from with regard to how they run their business on the road and what tools they use and that kind of stuff. So It'll be very fun and exciting, and it's kind of like a working space where they have big tables and everybody can hang out together and share ideas and work together, and so it's not your run-of-the-mill hotel. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And that's in the Chelsea area of London. So it's a great neighborhood, and it was $850 US for the week. So in addition to being a great hotel, it's the cheapest hotel in London.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I just had a very positive Airbnb experience in Washington, D.C., and then we'll get to the Q&A portion. But with the Inspire conference, Karl, of course, I didn't book my airfare and hotel till it was way too late. And the hotels were sold out, and if there was a hotel room near the convention center, it was $450 a night. And then I was with Lars, and I have an understanding with people like Lars that we each get our own room. Okay, so so that was going to take it up to $900 a night. We found a furnished apartment a mile and a half away, which was my daily walk, and $300 a night, Karl. 2 bedrooms. I mean, laundry, kitchen. Boy, howdy. So it's real. The disruption's real. You certainly have to shop to find those capabilities.
Yeah, I use TripAdvisor, and actually just booked my 8 days in Hawaii for my vacation in December, and it was $1,200 to get a condo for 3 of us for 8 days. I was like, you just literally can't beat that, and it's on the Kona, like on the beach. So
well, and when you say 3 people, that's 3 people with privacy. I mean, that's
right.
That's the key point, my friend.
Yeah, this is a 2-bedroom condo, and there's washers and dryers, and there's a full kitchen, and you can live there for a week without any problem.
Yeah, exactly. So let's move on. We'll see if the gods have rewarded us today with questions. Jenny's in the control room, and she'll be asking those since I'm driving today. But while we're doing that, let's just recap why we're here. So it's the Q2 MSP Analyst Report. As you probably noticed this time, we shook up the agenda with some new topics. We didn't cover some old topics such as the political realm and mergers and acquisitions and so on. And we had a little bit of fun because it is summertime, and we want to talk about the living is easy with good books and vacation time and so on. We will, of course, be back with the Q3 report. I'm anticipating that in early October. And we are going to know a lot more. I want to roll back to a slide I had early on about shelter in place as a Microsoft partner. If you read my analysis up on smbnation.com, you'll see that I'm just saying keep your head down for about 90 days. And there's some reasons for that people inside Microsoft are keeping their heads down for about 90 days, Karl, as this all sorts out. Got some great friends over there, and sometimes, Karl, I'll get into a conversation with someone from our audience, and they'll say, well, who did this? Who exactly at Microsoft did this? And I'm like, no, Microsoft they don't really work that way. There's not a specific, there's not a who, okay? And I said, more importantly, the people you and I know, the people you and I work with, they don't know what's going on, right? It's not this, Karl, they don't have secret meetings about how to confuse Karl and Harry.
Right, exactly.
They don't have time. So, Jenny, speak up if we have audience questions. If not, that's cool. And then again, a shout out. I'll be July 31st through August 3rd in Austin, Texas at the CompTIA ChannelCon conference, the following week at SharePoint Fest in Seattle. Karl, you have 2 workshops once again in August, and it was Chicago and Detroit, I believe you said?
Chicago and Detroit next week, and then off to England, Ireland, and Scotland in August. So, yeah.
Boy, howdy. That's cool.
So all right. Well, Grant getting arrested, is that what this is?
That's the 2-hand wave, but I guess it does kind of look like a mass arrest now that I think about it. That's from one of our workshop tours, Grant Thompson over on the left, our popular speaker on the road. With that said, Karl, Q2 is over. We're in Q3. Go forth and multiply.
All righty.
We do have a couple comments.
Oh, we do, Jenny. We do. Okay, we're almost at time, so let's rock, Jenny.
Really quick, Alex says to Karl that he looks forward to seeing you in Dublin. And
all right.
Then Ken says, in my contracts, I have 20% on signing, 50% when wiring completed, 80% on equipment arrival, and 100% on job completion.
Good. Although I think the time is now to get paid 100% in advance for hardware and software. I mean, literally, if they were going to order it online, they would have to put in their credit card at CDW or Dell or wherever. So just start getting paid in advance for that, and that doesn't even need a memo. Just the next time you quote something, just remind them that you'll order it as soon as you get paid.
There you go. Okay,
Perfect.
Jenny, thanks. Thanks as always, folks. You're going to get a thank you letter from Jenny with some resources as well as a link to replay this webinar. And Karl, thanks as always. Enjoy your travels, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
All right. Back to the salt mine, folks. Have a great day.